Hi everyone, it's Kim Record. You know how most of us have at least one part of our bodies that we're most critical of? And oftentimes the idea of just affirming that we love that part of our bodies is very difficult to do because it just doesn't feel like the truth. I don't know about you, but whenever I've tried affirmations in the past, as I was trying to develop more acceptance of my body, I'd often find myself calling bullshit on what I was trying to affirm. Pardon my language, but this is what I believe. It's why I believe for most people, affirmations, especially about our bodies, aren't always the most effective tool for developing true body love. So if not through affirmations, how do we start loving our bodies right now without changing a thing? Well, that's what my body love tip for you this week is all about, because I've found a technique that seems to have worked pretty well and that doesn't involve bullshitting myself. So if you are someone who also struggles with affirmations, you might find this to be a helpful alternative too. Over the years that I've spent struggling with my own body image, I found that there was one way that I could consistently go from judgment and criticism about some part of my body to total acceptance right away. And that was to become curious. What do I mean by that? Well, rather than picking apart that part of my body for what I believed was wrong with it, I instead started asking questions about it, which are all written for you out in the summary of my blog if you'd like to print them off and try them out for yourself, because I really do feel that they're effective and they're a big part of what's made such a big difference in my own process. Now, as I walk through these questions with you here on video, I'm going to use the example of the particular part of my own body that has been the biggest source of self-judgment and criticism for me for as long as I can remember. Since I was 3 years old, in fact, which are my thighs. Now, they're pretty normal. I'm going to show them to you because they're pretty normal, average size, run-of-the-mill thighs. They haven't changed much in size over the years, but I have hated them for most of my life. I did hate them for most of my life, literally since I could talk. I just always wanted them smaller, thinner, leaner. My mom still tells me to this day that I was probably the only 3-year-old ever to complain of having fat thighs. So when I first started on my journey toward loving my body without first having to change it, I was able to do this by starting to ask questions. Questions that took me away from judgment, away from criticism, and simply into inquiry. And there were 3 basic categories of questions that helped me to do this. The first category was examination. These were questions that helped me to get more insight into why my thighs were the way they were and why I felt about them the way I did. Now, it's very important when you answer these questions that you answer them honestly, but also very objectively, without blame, guilt, or shame. We're just becoming curious. So the first questions were, why is this particular part of my body the way it is? How much of it is genetics? How much of it is lifestyle? How much of it is situational or circumstantial? Also, how long have I been dissatisfied with it, which can help to give clues to some of the previous answers. So in my case, with my thighs, I had to really consider genetics, especially since this self-criticism started so early in my life. I looked at the shape of my body, the body shape of my parents, and I noticed that neither one of them has a small build. They're both strong and solid, and I realized that my thighs will never be like Kate Moss's thighs because I'm not genetically built to have rail thin legs the way I thought I wanted, which, by the way, most of us aren't. But also, being dissatisfied with my thighs from the age of 3 might indicate that this is not so much of a lifestyle concern. My parents gave me adequate nutrition, I wasn't addicted to junk food, nor was I particularly sedentary at that age, as most toddlers aren't known to be. I also asked myself, when have I been satisfied with this part of my body in the past, if ever? What was I doing differently? What was different in my life? Were both my mind and body healthy, or were they imbalanced? So in other words, is it realistic to expect the same results now, or was it simply a result of stress or illness or some other situation? So interestingly for me, anytime that my thighs have ever been thinner than usual, it's usually been at times in my life when I've been undernourished, like when I was a poor student traveling abroad, or a breastfeeding mom having everything sucked out of me. Not only did I not feel good or healthy or energized in these situations, but it also wasn't a realistic permanent lifestyle change. And the other interesting piece of awareness that this question brought me was that the very few times in my life that I'd actually been happy with my thighs without them being thinner was when I was being active, usually in the form of just walking or doing regular yoga practice. And I noticed that when I was less concerned about exercising for physical change and doing it more for the emotional benefit, that's when I really felt at my best, which not coincidentally was also when I was eating more intuitively and not following strict eating plans. I also became aware through this inquiry that it's when I was so tuned into what the experts and the marketers were telling me to do and to eat, that's when I was most tuned out of what my body was really asking for, which is a very interesting realization. So then I progressed to the second category of questions, which was appreciation. And this is where I asked myself, what is there to love about this part of my body? What does it do for me? What has it done for me? What would life be like without it? Well, obviously, my life would be a whole lot more difficult without my legs and thighs. And when I started to put this into perspective, how could I possibly hate them when they are the body parts literally responsible for keeping me easily mobile? I also started to ask, what are the strengths of this part of my body that I can build on? And by the way, we can always find strengths, but my thighs are actually built to be physically strong. They're not dainty, they're not waif-like, they're solid. And if I can build on this strength, they can actually provide me with a lot of joy and feelings of accomplishment in sports, if I could find some activities that I enjoy doing. Interestingly to note, I was never an athlete growing up for most of my life, which probably didn't help with the increasing judgment that I had of my thighs over the years. So after identifying that it was activity and sport that were the missing links keeping me from appreciating my thighs, I started to ask questions from the third category of inquiry, which is observation. I became an observer, like I was my own scientific experiment, and I started asking questions like, what will happen to this part of my body when I make this change or that change? And then I observe as I make those changes, which makes it also important to ask, how can I measure whether it's responding positively to the change or not? And I usually try to base this on how it feels, not simply on how it looks. So personally, I started to notice that when I'm running and I'm staying active, I don't hide my legs. I'm proud of them, even though they're not the vision of perfect legs I thought I'd once wanted. So when I'm doing activities that I know make me feel good, especially about my body, my legs, which is now most of the time, I never worry about what they look like because they feel good. And I'm enjoying the process of observing their response to my positive changes. So I'm going to put this challenge out to you now. How can you apply this curiosity approach in your own life? And remember, these are all questions that can only be answered by you. I guarantee you there is not a single expert out there who knows you better than you do, or who's written a book or done a study on your exact body's chemistry or physiology. It is yours and it's unique, and the best way that you can love it for what it is to learn more about it, which, by the way, is a lifelong process, which is why it's important to love it now as you're learning. Because criticism takes up so much more energy than learning does, and it definitely doesn't bring you the same happiness and fulfillment. Positive change does not come from criticism, it comes from learning. So choose curiosity over criticism. Choose observation over judgment. And enjoy becoming the expert of you as you learn, improve, and strengthen your body over time. The only real way to build a body that you love is to first love the body that you have. So until next time, have an amazing and beauty-filled week. And if you like this tip, please share it with the people in your life who could use a little more body love and self-compassion. You can also join my Body Love community to get these tips directly to your inbox every week by clicking on the link below and grabbing your free gift. And I'll see you next time.